everyone, and welcome back. We're taking a deep dive into film and television today. We'll be looking at some big mergers, some really cool new releases, and even checking out some of the highlights from festivals all over the world. Plus, a little bit of Hollywood drama always makes things interesting, you know?
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Come on.
Sounds like a busy month in the industry.
It really does. So I have a ton of articles here from Further and Better's TV, Film and Media Industry International News Roundup, all from their January 31st, 2025 issue. And there's a lot to get through, so let's just jump right in.
That sounds good to me.
All right, so first up, let's talk about Paramount. They're in the middle of trying to merge with Skydance Media, but things have gotten a little complicated. A Delaware judge just ordered Paramount to hand over a bunch of documents to a group of investors. And these investors, well, they're worried that Paramount's controlling shareholder Shari Redstone might be using the merger to benefit herself.
What do you think about all this? Well, mergers and acquisitions are pretty common in Hollywood.
Huh.
But this whole thing with the judge forcing disclosure, yeah, that's a little unusual. It definitely raises some questions about transparency. And you have to wonder if there are some conflicts of interest going on behind the scenes. It'll be interesting to see what those documents reveal. This could turn into a major scandal.
Yeah, you never know with these things. So we've got potential trouble brewing at Paramount. But meanwhile, over at Netflix, it seems like they're full steam ahead with some big plans for 2025. They've got all kinds of projects lined up. I'm talking huge names like Ben Affleck, Tina Fey, even Robert De Niro is attached to a new cyber-tech thriller. Plus, they're bringing back The Head for a final season. Apparently, they're taking the action to this crazy no man's land between Egypt and Sudan called Bur Tawil. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah. Bur Tawil.
Yeah.
It's like this lawless, scorching hot desert, the perfect setting for a tense thriller.
For sure. But get this. Netflix also wants to be more than just a streaming service. They're talking about launching Netflix restaurants and immersive experiences. It's like they want to take over the entire entertainment world.
It really does seem that way. I mean, they're trying to create a whole entertainment ecosystem. It makes you wonder if they can really pull it off or if they're spreading themselves too thin.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely a bold move.
So let's switch gears for a minute and talk about independent film. Our sources are painting a pretty complicated picture. On the one hand, indie films are facing some serious challenges. We're talking high distribution costs, outdated marketing strategies, and of course the dominance of these giant streaming platforms. It's tough out there for indie filmmakers. But on the other hand, there's also some really exciting developments happening. Things like AI-driven distribution models and advancements in digital production. There's potential for these things to really level the playing field. Right? It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Technology has made things harder for indie films in some ways, but it's also opening up new possibilities and maybe even some advantages.
Definitely. So what are some of the most interesting innovations you're seeing in indie film right now?
Well, one of the things I'm most excited about is how AI is being used to analyze audience data. So indie filmmakers can target their marketing much more effectively. That's a game changer when you're working with a limited budget. Plus, the advances in digital production are incredible. It's making filmmaking more accessible than ever.
That's great news. It sounds like indie film is poised for some really interesting changes. Now, speaking of pushing boundaries, there's this new film coming out called Companion, and it's got everyone buzzing. It's being described as this genre-bending thriller with elements of romance, sci-fi, even a heist and a murder mystery all mixed together. And the whole thing revolves around a breakup with an android.
Wow. That sounds wild.
Yeah, it really does.
And it seems like more and more filmmakers are experimenting with blending genres like this. Companion is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Taking familiar elements.
Yeah.
And twisting them in unexpected ways.
Exactly. It definitely sounds like a mind-bending movie experience. Now, while we're talking about must-see content, we have to mention the return of Squid Game. They just announced that the final season is premiering on June 27th.
Oh, wow. I can't wait.
Me neither.
Squid Game was such a global phenomenon. It had everything. Social commentary, those crazy games.
Yeah.
Such complex characters. I'm really curious to see how they'll wrap up the story.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. But for those who prefer something a little less, stressful, there's a new heist drama coming out on ITV called Frauds. It stars Saran Jones and Jodie Whittaker as con artists planning one last big art heist. What do you think makes for a good heist story? And what do you think about these two actresses taking on such iconic roles?
Well, I think the best heist stories really capture that thrill of the impossible. The meticulous planning, the unexpected twists and turns. You have to keep the audience wondering if they'll actually pull it off
Mhm.
and what the consequences will be. As for Saran Jones and Jodie Whittaker, I mean, they're both incredibly talented and versatile actresses. I think taking on these roles could really solidify their status as leading ladies in the industry.
I agree. It sounds like Frauds has all the ingredients for a great show. I'm definitely adding it to my watch list. Now let's shift gears again and talk about talent discovery, specifically the Clermont-Ferrand Short Film Festival. This festival has been a launching pad for some amazing filmmakers over the years, people like Jane Campion and Chloe Zhao. And this year they're showcasing films from 49 countries, covering everything from AI to political documentaries. What do you think it is about short things that allows filmmakers to be so bold and experimental?
Well, I think short films offer a really unique space for filmmakers to try new things and to push creative boundaries. They don't have the same commercial constraints as feature films, so there's more freedom of expression,
Yeah.
and they can really focus on exploring specific themes and techniques.
That makes sense. And it's incredible how this festival consistently showcases such a diverse range of voices and perspectives from around the world.
Yeah, it's really a testament to the power of short films. They can capture the human experience in such a powerful way,
Mm,
even in a short amount of time.
absolutely. So we've got all this amazing talent emerging from festivals like Clermont-Ferrand. And at the same time, we're seeing major industry events making a comeback, like the American Film Market or AFM, which is returning to Los Angeles in 2025.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It is. What do you think is driving this return to in-person events, especially after everyone got so used to virtual markets during the pandemic? Is it just nostalgia or is there something more to it?
Hmm. Well, virtual events definitely have their advantages in terms of accessibility and reach, but there's no substitute for face-to-face interaction, especially in an industry like film where relationships are everything. I think that the return of AFM to LA shows that people are craving that personal connection again, and it creates a more dynamic marketplace for independent filmmakers.
I see your point. So it's not just about nostalgia, it's about the need for real human connection and the energy that comes from being in the same room with other passionate people.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about another big event, the Berlin Film Festival. They just announced their jury, and it includes some pretty big names, like actress Fan Bingbing, director Maria Schrader, and filmmaker Todd Haynes. What are your thoughts on this lineup?
I think it's fantastic. They've put together a really diverse group. Each juror brings a unique perspective to the table, which highlights how global the industry is. And it really shows the Berlin Film Festival's commitment to showcasing a wide range of voices.
I love that. It's great to see that kind of representation. And speaking of representation, Eugenio Derbez and Ben Odell, the co-founders of Three Paths Studios, have been making waves in Hollywood for a decade now. They've been reshaping Latino narratives with projects like Acapulco and Radical.
Yeah, they've been doing amazing work. One of the things I admire most about them is their commitment to authenticity. They understand how important it is to represent Latino culture accurately and respectfully, while also creating stories that resonate with the global audience. And their success shows that there's a real hunger for more inclusive storytelling in Hollywood.
Absolutely. It's inspiring to see them paving the way for others, but it seems like not everyone is thrilled with how the industry is evolving. Our sources mention that PACT, which is a trade association representing independent production companies in the UK, is pushing back against some proposed changes to broadcasting regulations by Ofcom.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It sounds like these changes could have a major impact on the UK's independent production sector.
So what's the issue?
Well, PACT is arguing that the changes could stifle competition and create disadvantages for smaller production companies.
I see.
So it sounds like there's a potential power struggle brewing between broadcasters and independent producers in the UK.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
Agreed. Now let's switch gears one more time and talk about some exciting projects that are in development right now. The one that really caught my eye is the remake of the 1998 sci-fi horror classic, The Faculty. And guess what? The original director, Robert Rodriguez, is back as a producer.
Wow. I love that movie.
Me too.
Remakes are always a gamble. But with Rodriguez involved, I'm actually kind of excited about this one.
Me too. It'll be interesting to see how they update the story for a modern audience.
Right. While still keeping the spirit of the original.
Exactly. Speaking of remakes and adaptations, get this. Benny Safdie is teaming up with Christopher Nolan again for an adaptation of The Odyssey, and the cast is insane. Tom Holland, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, Robert Pattinson. I could go on and on.
Whoa. That's a star-studded cast. It's a pretty ambitious project, bringing the Odyssey to the big screen. But with Nolan directing and that cast, I think it has the potential to be a really epic film.
I agree. I'm already marking my calendar for this one. And there's a few other projects worth mentioning, like the third installment in the Susan Ryland murder mystery series. That's been a big hit for PBS Masterpiece. And for horror fans, there's an English language adaptation of Ru Murakami's novel Audition in the works. That book is seriously creepy.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one. It's supposed to be terrifying.
It is. And of course, you can't forget about sequels and reboots. It seems like Mira Sorvino and Lisa Kudrow are in talks to reprise their roles in a sequel to Romy and Michelle's high school reunion.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It is. The original was such a classic. I can't wait to see what they come up with for the sequel.
Oh, are they?
And Lena Dunham is back with a new Netflix series called Too Much. It stars Megan Skalter and Will Sharp.
I always enjoy Lena Dunham's work. She has a knack for creating really complex and relatable characters.
Yes, she does.
It'll be interesting to see what she explores in this new series.
Okay, and finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. Netflix has finally announced the official release date for the final season of Squid Game.
Yes.
Drumroll, please. June 27th.
Wow. Sooner than I expected.
Yeah, me too.
I'm sure the anticipation's going to be through the roof.
I know, I can't wait.
I wonder how they'll wrap everything up. And what will happen to the remaining players.
Yeah. So many questions. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on a few other things Netflix has been up to. They've been busy making deals and acquiring new content. They picked up Clint Bentley's Train Dreams at Sundance, and they greenlit a documentary about the Grenfell Tower fire. Plus, they've got Noah Baumbach's new film, Jay Kelly, which has an all-star cast. Like, everyone's in it.
Wow. They're really covering all their bases.
They are. It seems like they're determined to be the go-to destination for all kinds of content.
Yeah. From indie dramas to big-budget documentaries, they're not messing around.
Nope. And we're seeing some interesting activity in other parts of the industry, too. For example, Entertainment 360, which is a talent management company, secured a minority stake investment from Carlyle, which is a global investment firm. So that's a pretty big deal.
It is. It shows that major investors are seeing real potential for growth and profitability in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, it's a good sign. We're also seeing some cool international partnerships emerging, like Canada's Duo Productions and Poutine Studios are joining forces to develop bilingual content.
That's awesome.
It
It
is.
speaks to how global the industry is becoming.
Totally. And the importance of creating content that transcends language and cultural barriers.
Right.
So with all this activity happening, it feels like the entertainment industry is in a constant state of change and disruption.
It definitely is. It's constantly adapting to new technologies, shifting audience preferences, global trends. You really have to be adaptable and embrace innovation to succeed in this world.
That's a great point. So let's dive into some of the executive moves that are happening across the industry, because these leadership changes can give us some real insight into where things are headed.
Absolutely. It's like looking behind the curtain to see who's pulling the strings.
Exactly. So what's caught your eye?
Well, one of the moves that stood out to me is at CBS Studios. They've expanded Brian Seabury's role to include drama content strategy and development. It seems like a pretty clear signal that they're doubling down on creating compelling dramas, which is really important for a network like CBS that relies so heavily on that genre.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's all about staying competitive in today's market. What about international companies? Are we seeing similar trends there?
We are. For example, Tulipop Studios in Iceland is expanding its global sales team, which suggests they're looking to reach a wider audience. And Aardman, the animation studio behind Wallace and Gromit, they just appointed Kenny England to lead their digital, social, and community initiatives.
So it's not just about creating great content, it's about making sure it reaches the right people. And that means engaging with audiences online.
Exactly.
It seems like these are essential ingredients for success in today's entertainment world.
I think so.
Now, there's another move that I found really interesting. John Gore, who's a big-time Broadway producer, is launching a new TV and film studio in the UK, and he's focusing on acquiring film libraries and developing both classic and new storytelling projects.
Wow. That's a bold move.
Right.
Launching a new studio in such a competitive landscape,
I know.
it makes you wonder what kind of content they'll prioritize and how they'll differentiate themselves.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how it all plays out.
For sure.
And speaking of fascinating moves, Weta FX, the visual effects company co-founded by Peter Jackson. They just appointed Daniel Sia as their new CEO.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It makes you think about the direction they might be headed in.
totally. Okay, now, are there any other notable changes happening in the sales and distribution side of the industry?
Yeah, there are a couple worth mentioning. Hanway Films appointed Andrei Kamarowski as their new director of international sales.
Mhm.
And Italian sales executive Tommaso Priante just launched a new sales agency called Luminalia.
That's great. It seems like sales and distribution are becoming even more crucial, especially with the rise of streaming platforms and the constantly changing dynamics of the global film market.
You're absolutely right.
It's a lot to keep up with.
It is.
So, we've covered a lot of ground today, from potential scandals and ambitious expansions to creative breakthroughs and industry shakeups. What stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from all this news?
Hmm. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the entertainment industry is incredibly dynamic and innovative. It's constantly evolving and adapting to new challenges and opportunities. It's a really exciting time to be following this world.
It really is.
And I think the only constant is change.
I agree. So we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds for this ever-evolving industry. But for now, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and be sure to keep exploring the amazing world of film and television.
Yeah, there's always something new to discover. And, speaking of exciting events, the American film market is coming back to Los Angeles in 2025.
Ah, the AFM. That's interesting. What do you think is bringing these big in-person events back, especially after the rise of virtual markets during the pandemic? Is it just nostalgia, or are there some deeper industry forces at play here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, virtual events definitely have their advantages. Like you said, they're more accessible
Uh-huh.
and they can reach a wider audience. But
Yeah.
you just can't beat that face-to-face interaction, especially in an industry like film, where relationships are so important. So I think the AFM's return to LA really shows that people want to reconnect in person. And I think it'll create a more dynamic and exciting marketplace for independent filmmakers.
That makes sense. There's just something about being in the same room with other passionate people, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of big events, the Berlin Film Festival just announced their jury, and it includes some pretty big names. Actress Fan Bingbing, director Maria Schrader, and filmmaker Todd Haynes. What do you think about this lineup?
Oh, wow. That's an impressive group. I think it's a really fantastic and diverse jury.
Yeah.
Each juror brings such unique expertise and a different perspective to the table. It really highlights the global nature of the film industry. And I think it speaks to the Berlin Film Festival's commitment to showcasing a variety of voices.
It's so great to see that kind of representation. Speaking of which, Eugenio Derbez and Ben Odell, the co-founders of 3Pace Studios, they've been making some serious waves in Hollywood for the past decade, really reshaping Latino narratives with projects like Acapulco and Radical.
Yeah, they're doing some incredible work. What I find really fascinating about their approach is their emphasis on authenticity. They really understand the importance of representing Latino culture accurately and respectfully. But at the same time, they're creating stories that resonate with audiences all over the world. And their success really shows that there's a growing demand for more inclusive storytelling in Hollywood.
I completely agree. It's so inspiring to see them breaking down barriers and paving the way for others. But it seems like not everyone is happy with how the industry is evolving. Our sources mentioned that PACT, which is a trade association representing independent production companies in the UK, is pushing back against some proposed changes to broadcasting regulations by Ofcom.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like these changes could have a pretty significant impact on the UK's independent production sector.
So what are they so worried about?
Well, PACT is arguing that these changes could really stifle competition and create some serious disadvantages for smaller production companies. So it sounds like there could be a bit of a power struggle brewing between broadcasters and independent producers in the UK.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a point of tension. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Agreed. The outcome of these regulatory changes could really reshape the UK film and television landscape.
For sure.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about some exciting projects that are in development. The one that really caught my attention is the remake of the 1998 sci-fi horror classic, The Faculty.
Oh, wow.
The Faculty.
Yeah. And get this, Robert Rodriguez, the original director, is back as a producer.
That's cool. I mean, remakes can be a hit or miss, but having Rodriguez involved definitely adds a level of intrigue.
Right.
I'm curious to see how they'll update the story for a modern audience
Me too.
while still honoring the original.
Exactly. Now, speaking of remakes and adaptations, this one's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Benny Safdie is teaming up with Christopher Nolan again to adapt The Odyssey for the big screen.
No way.
Yes.
The Odyssey.
The Odyssey.
And wait till you hear the cast. Tom Holland, Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, Robert Pattinson. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Wow. That's a seriously impressive cast.
Right.
It's a huge undertaking to bring the Odyssey to life on screen,
It is.
but with Nolan directing in that cast,
Yeah.
it could be incredible.
I'm already counting down the days.
Me too.
Okay, so there are a few other projects worth mentioning. There's going to be a third installment in the Susan Rhineland murder mystery series, which has been a huge hit for PBS Masterpiece. And for those who like horror, there's an English language adaptation of Rue Murakami's novel Audition in the works.
Oh, I've heard of that book. It's supposed to be pretty disturbing.
Oh, it is.
Not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
No.
And of course, we can't forget about sequels and reboots. It seems like Mira Sorvino and Lisa Kudrow are in talks to reprise their roles in a sequel to Romy and Michelle's high school reunion.
Oh my God. Seriously.
Seriously.
That's amazing. I loved that movie.
Me too.
It would be so much fun to see what Romy and Michelle are up to now.
I know.
I wonder what kind of shenanigans they'll get into this time.
Oh, I'm sure they'll find some trouble. And Lena Dunham is back with a new Netflix series called Too Much, starring Megan Stalter and Will Sharp.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Lena Dunham always creates such interesting characters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
complex and relatable.
Yeah, she does.
I'm curious to see what she explores in this new series.
Me too. Now, big news.
Mm-hmm.
Netflix finally announced the official release date for the final season of Squid Game.
Okay. I'm ready.
Drum roll, please.
Uh-uh.
June 27th.
Wow. That's sooner than I expected.
Right.
The hype for this final season is going to be insane.
I know. I can't wait to see how they wrap up the story.
Me neither.
So before we move on from Netflix, I just wanted to mention a few other things they've been up to. They picked up Clint Bentley's Train Dreams at Sundance, and they've greenlit a documentary about the Grenfell Tower fire. Plus, Noah Baumbach has a new film coming out on Netflix called Jay Kelly, and it has an all-star cast.
Wow. They're really going all in on content.
They are.
It's like they want to have something for everyone.
Exactly.
From indie darlings to big budget documentaries. They're not messing around.
Nope. Now, shifting gears a bit, there's been some interesting activity in other parts of the industry. For instance, Entertainment 360, which is a talent management company, they just secured a minority stake investment from Carlyle, a global investment firm.
Oh, wow. That's a significant deal.
It is.
It really shows that major investors are taking notice of the entertainment industry, and they see potential for growth and profitability.
Absolutely. It's a real vote of confidence in the industry's future.
Yeah.
Now we're also seeing some really cool international partnerships popping up, like Canada's Duo Productions and Poutine Studios are joining forces to develop bilingual content.
That's awesome.
It is.
I think it really speaks to the increasingly global nature of the entertainment industry and the importance of creating content that can reach audiences across different languages and cultures.
Absolutely. It's a really exciting development. So with all this activity, all these mergers and acquisitions, new projects, and international partnerships, it's clear that the entertainment industry is in a state of constant flux.
It definitely is. It's a very dynamic and ever-changing landscape.
It really is.
You know, from corporate mergers to technological advancements to evolving audience preferences, it seems like the key to success in this industry is being adaptable and embracing innovation.
Couldn't agree more. Now, speaking of adapting to change, let's take a closer look at some of the executive moves that are happening across the industry, because these leadership changes can give us a glimpse into where things are headed.
It's true. Executive moves can be a really interesting way to see where the industry is going.
Definitely. So let's get into some of these leadership changes. What's caught your eye?
Well, one that stands out is at CBS Studios. They've expanded Brian Seabury's role to include drama, content, strategy, and development.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty clear sign they're really focusing on those compelling dramas, which makes sense for a network like CBS. You know, they lean pretty heavily on that genre.
Yeah, makes sense. It's all about staying competitive. Now, what about international companies? Are we seeing similar trends?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For example, Tulipop Studios in Iceland is expanding its global sales team. Sounds like they're trying to reach a wider audience.
Makes sense.
And Aardman, the animation studio, you know, the folks behind Wallace and Gromit.
Of course.
Well, they've appointed Kenny England to lead their digital, social, and community initiatives.
Interesting. So it's not just about the content anymore. It's about getting it out there and engaging with the audience online.
Exactly.
Essential for success these days.
It really is. Now, this next one is really interesting. John Gore, the Broadway producer, he's launching a brand new TV and film studio in the UK, and he's focusing on buying up film libraries and developing both classic and new storytelling projects.
Wow, that's ambitious. Launching a whole new studio?
I know, right?
It'll be interesting to see what kind of content they end up focusing on and how they'll make their mark in such a competitive landscape.
Agreed. It's a bold move, for sure. Oh, and speaking of interesting moves, Weta FX, the visual effects company co-founded by Peter Jackson,
Yeah.
they just appointed Daniel C. as their new CEO.
Huh. Interesting. What do you think that means for them?
I don't know, but it makes you wonder what direction they're heading in.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now are there any big changes happening in the world of sales and distribution?
Um,
Hmm.
Let me see. Oh, yeah. Hanway Films just appointed Andrei Komarovsky as their new director of international sales. And Tommaso Priante, an Italian sales executive, he launched a new sales agency called Luminalia. Wow. So much happening on that side of things. It seems like sales and distribution are more important than ever, especially with streaming and the global film market constantly changing.
Absolutely. It's a whole other beast to tackle.
It really is. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from potential scandals and studio shakeups to new projects and exciting international partnerships. What stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the entertainment industry is constantly evolving. It's always adapting to new technology, new ways of reaching audiences. And I think that's what makes it so exciting to follow.
I completely agree. It never gets boring.
Never.
So we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds for film and television. But for now, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the entertainment industry.
It's been fun.
Always. And be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into the world of film and television.